Good morning everyone, especially to our very accommodating professor, Dr. Minnie P. Chan. This morning, I'm going to discuss about process-oriented performance-based assessment. And this morning, these are our learning objectives. At the end of the discussion, you will be able to, number 1, determine the purpose of process-oriented performance-based assessment. Number 2, gain knowledge about the learning competencies in process-oriented performance-based assessment. Number 3, identify the generally accepted standards for designing a task. Number 4, determine the different types of scoring rubrics and their uses. Number 5, value the information obtained in process-oriented performance-based assessment. So what is process-oriented performance-based assessment? It evaluates the actual task performance. It does not emphasize on the output or product of the activity. This assessment aims to know what processes a student undergoes when given a task in order to arrive at the products or outputs. Sometimes those very impressive and creative outputs or projects submitted to us by our students were not actually made by them, but by their classmates, by their parents, or other people. It means that we need to assess the processes which the students underwent in order to arrive at those outputs or projects, because it entails not only what the students know with regards to their knowledge, skills, and abilities, but as well as what they can do with what they know. These are the purposes why we need to give performance tasks, may it be process or product. Number 1, involve student in the learning process. Number 2, give students opportunities to demonstrate and integrate their knowledge, understanding, and skills. Number 3, give students the freedom to express their learning in appropriate and diverse ways, because we do have diverse learners. Number 4, encourage student inquiry, integration of knowledge, understanding, and skills in various contexts. So when are we going to give performance tasks to our students? The answer is at the end of the lesson, focusing on a topic or skill of a lesson. And how many times? Not once, not twice, but several times during the quarter. The process-oriented learning competencies. These are the learning objectives in the process-oriented performance-based assessment are stated in directly observable behaviors. Such behavior range from a beginner or novice level up to the level of expert. Suppose we want our students to recite the table of multiplication. So to recite is an observable behavior. The learning competencies should start from a general statement and then breaks down to easily observable behaviors. So what then are the skills that our students need to show or perform in memorizing the table of multiplication? Of course, he or she needs to speak orally and confidently without looking at his or her notes, and of course to deliver it with accuracy. Example of my task, since I am a mathematics teacher, I try to apply the concept in my field. Formulate 3 real-life problems that involve permutation and solve. And my objective is in line with my task. The activity aims to enable the students to formulate 3 problems in real life that involve permutation and solve the problems. From these general objectives, I then break this down into specific objectives. Number 1, formulate real-life problems showing in-depth comprehension of the mathematical concepts of permutation. Number 2, use proper capitalization, punctuation, and grammar in writing the word problems. So this is integrating English in teaching mathematics. Number 3, find the correct answer for each problem showing the complete solution. Number 4, explain how the formulated problems can be used in making decisions in daily life. Aside from problem solving and formulating word problems, there are different examples of process-oriented performance-based tasks in mathematics as well as in other subject areas. So we have constructing graphs, multimedia presentation, probability experiments, etc. And for other types of process-oriented performance-based tasks, we have completing an inquiry like interview, determining a position like debate, demonstration tasks, like for example, if we are going to let our students demonstrate or explain earthquake safety procedures. And then presentation tasks like singing, reciting, storytelling, and physical skills like dancing, etc. So The question now is, can we still let our students do this performance test and be able to observe their performance in this time of new normal situation? My answer is yes. Because with the use of the internet and the different platforms for online learning or distance learning, we can still observe the process while the students do this task. So we just need to be flexible and innovative. Like for example, if we have 40 students, since we could not have a face-to-face encounter or interaction with our students, we could schedule 10 of them to perform for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the task, and observe them. Then the next batch of 10 students until all are done. So it depends on the strategy that you want to employ to your students in this time of new normal situation. So task designing. These are the generally accepted standards for designing a task. Identify activity that highlight competency to be evaluated. What competency you want to evaluate or observe from your students? Let's say skill in cooking, problem solving, public speaking, what else? Then identify activity that entails more or less same sets of competencies. Let's say you want to observe your students to compose or make a poem. So just focus on that competency. Let's say the organization, choice of words, grammar, fluency of thought, etc. But do not mix that with another competency. Let's say you want them to sing or dramatize their poem. That will be another task for them to do. Then find tasks that will be interesting and enjoyable for the students. So those tasks that are appealing or into their taste. Let's say in Filipino or English, they could do TikTok or pick-up lines, debate, as long as it is goal-based or aligned to our learning objectives. Then, let's proceed to rubric. It is a scoring scale used to assess student performance along a task-specific set of criteria. The student's aptitude in a task is determined by matching the student's performance against a set of criteria to determine the degree of which the student's performance meets the criteria for the task. So it is a standard or a set of expectations that we teachers have in connection to the task given, which is the basis of categorizing student performance or response to the tasks. And why do we use rubrics? For us teachers, to help us make scoring easier for performance tests. Since it is not an objective type of test, we cannot just magic their score. That is why we need to use rubrics. Then, ensure scoring reliability across multiple students. There is consistency in scoring each of our students. Provide feedback and accountability to students. Of course, you can tell the students that he or she needs to develop or focus on this particular area or aspect. And to others who did very good at this area, they need to keep up with their good work so that the students will be motivated and encouraged to do their best. For students as well, to be able to see criteria for success, see strengths and weaknesses, receive meaningful feedback, and understand their score. So there will be less complaints or claimers from our students as well as from their parents. Because let's say if they got the score of 5 out of 20, as supported by the rubric, because he or she performed in the level of a beginner, for sure he or she will be able to understand why. So as a tip, we need to give as our students a copy of the rubric when we assign the performance task. Why? Because these are not meant to be a surprise criteria. Our students need to prepare, need to rehearse, need to study so that they will be able to achieve their goal, of course, to get a high grade and to pass and learn. We have two types of rubrics. Actually, it's more than two, but these two are what we usually use. The first one is analytic rubric and the second one is the holistic rubric. So an analytic rubric articulates levels of performance for each criterion. So the teacher can assess student performance on each criterion. We have here the framework of an analytic rubric. The first one is the task. So this serves as the title of our rubric. History research paper rubric, we could have problem solving rubric. There are many other rubrics depending on the task that we require our students to do, research rubric, etc. Then the criteria, and each of the rows represents the criterion, the number of sources, historical accuracy, organization, and bibliography. So what is criteria? These are characteristics of good performance in a test, and we need to have at least 2 criteria in the rubric that we're going to make. In the given example here, we have 2 criteria. The first criterion is the number of correct answers, and the second is the time consumed while decoding. So these are components or the performance traits that we want to observe in a given task. We have here another example of an analytic rubric to assess information literacy, and we have 4 criterion here. We have range of relevant materials, citations, use of sources, and plagiarism. And please do detailed reading in the handout that I will be giving you. So next is the level of performance. Level of performance determine to what degree the student has met the criterion. So in the given rubric below, there are 5 levels of performance for each criterion. We have below basic, proficient, advanced, and outstanding. So as we develop our rubric, we need to decide how many different levels of performance it should have, and whether we're going to list it from the highest possible level of achievement or performance first or last. We could start from the level of a beginning or beginner up to proficient, or we can do it vice versa, from proficient to beginning, or from let's say developing to exemplary, or exemplary to developing. Excuse me, this video is #no cuts, no filter. So we have 3 levels: weak, satisfactory, strong; 4 levels: unacceptable, marginal, proficient, distinguished. So please do detailed reading in the handouts because I only have limited time to deliver my discussion. So for the scoring scale there, the scoring scale consideration, it's up to us teachers if where we want to start our scoring scale. So if you feel that the students are deserving of at least 1 point, you may start with 1. Otherwise, you may start at 0. The next is the descriptor or descriptors found at the bottom. Actually, each criterion and each level of performance needs to have descriptors for us to be able to give specific feedback to our students. So descriptors spell out what is expected of students at each level of performance for each criterion. Help the teachers more precisely and consistently distinguish students' work. So descriptions of what performance will look like at each level. We have here for the criterion of math concepts, in the level of performance beginning, description of what beginning performance would look like, as well as the basic, proficient, up to advanced. Description of what advanced performance would look like. So that is what we call descriptors. What is specifically our expectation of the performance of our students in each criterion. Next is an optional column, and you may or you may not include this. In the second to left column, a weight is assigned for each criterion. So student here can receive in the historical accuracy 3, 6, or 9 points for the level of accuracy in their projects. So it is because this criterion is considered by the teacher as more important than the number of sources, organization, and bibliography. So sometimes, if that particular component requires more effort from the students, we need also to compensate them by giving them more weight for that specific criterion so that they will be motivated to work or be challenged. So I have a sample of an analytic rubric. Just see it in your handout. Then, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using an analytic rubric? For the advantages, we have detailed feedback, weights different criteria, reduce student confusion. And for the disadvantages, it takes time to develop, criteria need to be well defined, and need training for reliability with multiple graders. So the analytic rubric is good for, of course, giving specific feedback to our students. So the next is what we call a holistic rubric. Does not list separate levels of performance for each criterion. Instead, all criteria considered in the evaluation is included together. So as what you can see here in the first column, we have the score, or you could write there the level of performance, because it is understood that if you got 4, you are outstanding, proficient, or exemplary. And for the second column, we have the descriptors. As what you can see, all the criteria or the descriptors are lumped or combined. Then we have here another example of a holistic rubric for speaking. So this one, per column, is arranged according to the level of performance. We have exceeds expectation, meets expectations, and fails to meet expectations. And still, as what you can see, for each level of performance, all the what we call descriptors or criteria or lumped or combined. So the advantages and disadvantages of using a holistic rubric. For the advantages, easier to create an analytic rubrics, speed up marking process, provide a single score, consistent marking across multiple students, useful for high volume tests, of course, because it provides a single score. And for the disadvantages, lumped everything together, don't provide specific feedback or on strengths and weaknesses of the students, then inconsistent across multiple scorers. Why? Because let's say if teacher A has a different standard for the student's performance in that particular task, he or she will give a different score compared to teacher B. So these are the steps for constructing a rubric from the University of West Florida Center of University Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. We only have 3 steps. The first one is for us to determine the elements or criteria that will be used to evaluate the work. That means we're going to list all the criteria or performance traits that must be present in the student's work in order to ensure that it is high in quality. Next, we are going to identify the difference between good work and weaker work, and that refers to the performance levels. As suggested here, we need to use 3 to 5 levels. And number 3, describe the procedures used for making judgments or assigning score, and this refers to descriptors. So we're going to write clear descriptions of the types of work that will be assigned to each level of performance. So the last portion of our discussion is about utilization of information. So what then after we use rubric? It will result in an efficient and consistent grading process. I have here an example on how to convert a rubric score into a grade. But sometimes we teachers, whatever the score is, we just input it in the e-class record because it is electronic, or the computer will generate 40% out of that score. But we have here an example of a rubric. This is our problem solving, particularly solving an equation. So let's say if the students got 3 points for the equation solution, then for the equation answer he got 4 points, And for the explanation of solution, he got 3 points. So out of 12 points, he earned 10 points. So 10 divided by 12 equals 83%. So the student will receive 83% as a result of a rubric score. Of course, if the teacher or the evaluator changes it into a percent. And for another option, we have a letter grade with the following scale of scores. So this is suggested point scale that seems to work fairly well. Why? Because we can adjust up or down the grades that best meet the needs of our students, particularly for those who needs mercy. Let's say if he got a letter grade of C, instead of giving him or her 62, we're going to give him or her 74 in order to help that particular student. Then, let's go back here. It provides valuable information about the degree of which specific learning outcome has been achieved. So if all the outcomes of the student's performance is let's say in the level of a beginner, or they got low scores, of course we need to reflect on our teaching strategies and what we call teaching techniques and practices. Then it allow for monitoring of students that are failing behind. Of course, we need to give focus on those students who got let's say low scores on that particular criterion, so that we could be able to help him or her. Allow the student to reflect on their work and focus on how to improve in the future. So this is on the side of the students. Of course, after giving them the constructive feedback, they could be able to reflect if in what particular area they need to improve or study further, so that in the next performance task that you are going to give, they can be able to have higher score. Then, to adjust course materials. So we also need to see if our teaching materials go along or is on the level of understanding of our students, so that they could be able to perform well in